Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jo Morris. I'm one of the Pac-West board members, and I also help run the Fastener Training Institute. And we're really excited today to have Salim Brahimi from the Industrial Fasteners Institute with us to demonstrate how their online technology connection works. Before we get started, I would just like to remind all of you and let you all know that as a Pac-West member, you do receive a 20% discount for new subscriptions to the ITC. And if you're an existing subscriber, you receive a 10% discount when you renew. Plus, the IFI has a lot of other great resources. One of them is the Inch Standards book. And that's that big book that's got tons of great information in it. There is a new edition coming out, your 11th edition. It's either coming out or it will be coming out soon. And Pac-West members also receive a 20% discount to the hardbound book. So that's something that every company who's on the phone today should certainly have. So our format today is pretty informal. We're going to do a demonstration and then we're going to open this up to questions. We do have quite a few people joining us today, so I'm going to keep everybody muted. If you have a question, please type it into your question box of your control panel, and then I'm going to read it at the end. And if you don't ask a question or you think of one later, please email either myself or Jamie Adams at the Pac-West, and we will get it answered for you. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Salim Brahimi, who is the Director of Engineering and Technology at the Industrial Fasteners Institute.
Thank you very much, Jo, and hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. It's Friday, which is always good as far as I'm concerned. So as Jo introduced, we are going to do a demo of the IFI Technology Connection. So that's really going to be the focus of today's presentation. And it's a short presentation, so we only have 45 minutes. So I'm really going to emphasize that. But before we get into the technology connection, I'm going to give you an introduction to the IFI and some of the other products, technological products that we offer. So in case you don't know, the IFI is North America's Association of Fastener Manufacturers. We have about 160 member companies. Our headquarters are in Cleveland, Ohio, more specifically in Independence, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. And we have a satellite office in Montreal and Quebec where I live. Now, our membership is divided by industrial sector. So depending on what market you serve as an IFI member, you're classified either in Division 1, 2, or 3. Our Division 1 members are manufacturers of what we call industrial products. So this is basically a basket where anything that's non-automotive and non-aerospace falls into. So if you're making structural bolts or if you're making little screws, you fall into Division 1 membership. Division 2 is our aerospace membership, and those are manufacturers that produce specifically for the aerospace industry. Most of these companies are located in Southern California, and a couple of them here in Quebec, where we also have our aerospace hub. As far as Division 3 members, these are companies that are mostly located in the Midwest and in Southern Ontario, supplying the auto industry either as Tier 1 suppliers or further down tiers, Tier 2s and Tier 3s. We also have a 4th division. These are our associate members. So these are not fastener manufacturers per se, but they make or produce services for the fastener manufacturers. So it could be the steel companies, companies that do heat treating, supply coating processes, or just the coatings themselves, heading equipment, sorting equipment, and so on and so forth. And so this is our 4th division. Just quickly about the history of what we do. The IFI has been around since 1931, and our first book of standards was published in 1941, approximately. Don't quote me on that date, but I'm pretty sure it's 1941. And we're now up to the 11th edition. As Jo mentioned, the edition is in fact published, and we received our first copies, hard copies of the book at our headquarters even today. So as of now, we'll be shipping the books to whoever orders them. So we've been developing fastener standards since the late 1930s, published our first book in 1941, and historically have provided not only technical services and support, not just to our membership, but to the industry as a whole. We've been developing standards, and we've been very much involved in the development of the consensus standards. A lot of the current ASME and ASTM standards originated as IFI standards going back to the 1940s. And we're also very involved in the development of the ISO standards. So just again, I don't want to spend too much time on this introductory things, but just so that you know, we have a very close relationship with the Fastener Training Institute, and as well as the Fastener Distributors Associations like Pac-West, and we value your partnership very much. So thank you for that. So I'm going to skip these slides and move to the heart of the matter. This slide is a bit outdated as of today. It's showing the 2018 edition. You can scratch that and move to the 2021 edition, which is our 11th edition of book. That's what you see on the left of your screen. It's the hardcover book. This new edition is a black hardcover, and it contains 96 standards. It's a compilation of standards: ASTM, ASME, IFI, and SAE standards. We also have an online version of the book. So if you subscribe to our online book of standards, you basically get the same content, the same standards, with the benefit of being able to access it from any computer that has internet connection. And also the big benefit is that the standards are continually updated. So as soon as a new revision is released, within a day or two, we upload it into the server and you have access to it right away. So I'm not going to spend too much time demoing this, but just so that you know that it exists. Now the online, so the hardcover book, our list price is $600. As Joe mentioned, you get a discount as Pac-West members. Our online book is on a yearly subscription basis, and the prices are on the screen. One user is $575, and then the price per user goes down significantly when you go to 5 or 10 users. Okay, and now the technology connection. So the technology connection has been developed about 10 years ago, and it was started by my predecessor, Joe Greenslade. And it's a very innovative tool. What it does is it takes all the technical data from all the standards. So if you have the book of standards, it's full of tables and numbers and requirements and hardness values and dimensions. So all the information is in the hardcover book, but if you want to specify one part, if you want to get all the details for one specific part, you end up having to spend, and if you know your way around the book, at least 45 minutes to, maybe sometimes an hour. That's if you know your way around the book to get all the details, all the numbers that you need so that you can have a spec sheet. So what the technology connection does is it's a relational database that selects the data based on your selection of a particular part. And I'm going to demo that a little bit later. Now, what's unique about it is that it combines specification both in inch and metric. So you can search up a metric part and search up an inch part. I would say 98% of the inch parts are in, and about 80% of the metric parts are in. One thing that you should know is that the technology connection is limited to parts that are described in the consensus standards. So if it's a special or if it's a part that doesn't exist in the standard, then you won't find it in the technology connection. You may be able to get the relevant details, but you won't get the dimensions of that exact part or the requirements of that exact part. So just keep that in mind. So the output, when you select a part and you say, I want a part of this size, this length, this grade, this strength level, it will again spit out one sheet in a PDF format that looks like this sheet on the screen that you have over here. And it will give you all the information that you need for that part. Now, distributors such as yourselves are the most heavy users of the technology connection, because very often you're getting parts to quote for your customers, and you want to be able to have all the technical details for the part. Very often distributors will send a printout or a PDF version of this technical data sheet along with their quote to the customer. Now, the list price for the technology connection is $1,000 for one user and $1,500 for 5 users and $2,250 for 10 users. And of course, in your case, you would be applying your discount to these numbers. We also offer a 30-day free trial for the technology connection. So if you decide you want to do a test run before you purchase it, you're free to do so. There are no strings attached. You get 30 days, and if you decide you don't want it, once those 30 days are up, your access is cut off, and there's no hook to put you on a credit card or anything like that. Mind you, also for the online book, there's a 7-day free trial, kind of the same deal, and I'll show you how you can access that. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but just so that you know, if you need the ISO metric collection of fastener standards, we struck a deal with ISO to make this collection available using the same idea as an online collection, and this is done through the Standards Council of Canada. So if you need more information on it, it's available either on the website or you can email me. Okay, and so now let's go to the actual presentation of the sort of the test run of the technology connection. So here on your screen, you'll see our homepage, the www.intfast.org page. And once you have your subscription or your trial, you'll log in. And after you log in, now I'm going to zoom. After you log in, you get to this welcome to my IFI page, and depending on your subscriptions, you either have the technology connection or the technology connection and the online book, and you'll always have this edit subscription information. This is where you can control not only your payment information, but who has access and passwords as well. So you control all of that yourself. So from this My IFI page, I'm going to select technology connection. But before I do, I'll just give you a quick view of the online book. So when you click on online book, you basically come to this viewer. It's an on-screen viewer of the book. You have the table of contents here on the left. And I'm just going to pick some random standard. This is always going to be the latest revision of a standard. And you can see the standard looks very much like it is in fact the original format of the standard. It hasn't been reformatted like what we do in the hardcover book. So you can access it, you can zoom it, and so the whole collection is located here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the technology connection. So this is the home page of the technology connection. Now, if you look at the home page, you'll see that there's this section called Fastener Technical Data. This is the heart of the technology connection. Okay, so there are a number of fasteners that are listed there, all the different types of fasteners, from anchor bolts to hex cap screws, nuts. Every type of fastener is described and falls into one of these categories, all the way down to washers and threaded rod. Now, so this is the heart of the technology connection, but there are a number of other utilities and tools that we've added to surround this capability. And then those, you can see these are located either as iconed menu items here, and the same items are listed on the left hand side menu as well. So these are more specific tools that will give you details and information as additional add-on. And for example, here you have a toolbar here that gives you a fraction converter. It might sound mundane, but if you're not sure what a 7/64 is in decimal places, then it'll give you that information right at your fingertips. There's also a very useful tool that's a hardness conversion tool. Over here, you specify any one of these values on any one of these scales, whether it's a hardness value or a tensile strength value, both in pounds per square inch or in megapascals, and it will give you the equivalent. So if I want to know, let's say, what is 39 Rockwell C. Well, 39 Rockwell C on the 15N scale is 80, on the 30N scale is 59, on the 45N scale is 42. It's equal to 382 Vickers, and that corresponds to a tensile strength of 181,000 pounds, or in megapascals, 1248. So this is an example of a very useful tool. And then we have other things like an inch metric converter, which is useful, and then a glossary of terms. So this is not a search tool per se. It's the terms are listed in alphabetical order, but the definitions come right out of the specifications. So if you want to know what, for example, blind fastener is, it gives you the definition of a blind fastener. If you wanted to know, for example, what ostempering is, it gives you the definition of ostempering. So these are some of the, again, the corollary tools, but back to the heart of the technology connection, which is this specification system here. So we're going to pick a part, and I'll just pick any part. I'm going to pick a hex cap screw. So if I look at my list, I say, well, hex caps, well, cap screw, there we go, that's the second item. And I'm going to search an inch cap screw. So I'm going to click on the inch and not on the metric. So once I click on the inch, then I get a long list of everything that falls under this category. So these are bolts and cap screws. And you can see there are 32 items that fall into this category. What I wanted was a hex cap screw. So if I go down the list, oh, there it is, number 17, that's a hex cap screw. So now I've picked the product that I'm looking for. If I'm not sure that it is what I want, there's an image. You can click on the image. This is the drawing directly out of the specification for hex cap screws. And then that's, you see, oh, that is in fact what I'm looking for. So you can close that. And now we're going to select our product. So if you know a little bit about fasteners, of course, there's the product type, which is basically the shape and the dimensions of the product. And then there's the material side, which tell you what strength level, what steel, what hardness, what heat treatment, and so on and so forth. So the technology connection combines all that information into one. But let's say you didn't want all the material information, you just want the dimensional information. You can do that by selecting dimensions only, and you'll only get the dimensions. But for this demonstration, I'm going to not do that. I'm going to select the material standard. And in this case, my hex cap screw is going to be a grade 8 part. So grade 8 would fall under SAE J429. I'm going to click on that. And the selections that you make determine what your choices are for the next menu item. So because I selected this SAE J429 standard, when I come to select the size range that I'm given is from 1/4 inch to 1.5 inches. That's specific to that SAE standard. If I had picked a different standard, then I would have the size selection that's appropriate for that standard, that other standard. So I'm going to pick a 1/2 inch screw. And then once I pick that 1/2 inch, I'm going to select the threads per inch or the pitch. And I have two choices, again, that are specific to 1/2 inch. So either a coarse thread, which would be a 1/2 inch 13, or a fine thread, which would be a 1/2 inch 20. I'm going to go with the standard coarse thread. And then the thread class. So if if I plan to have a coating or a plating put on here, I'm going to select this one. And really the importance of that is it tells you that to check the threads after plating, you need a 3A go gauge and a 2A no-go gauge. So it kind of clarifies that question. The length really doesn't matter, except it's something that's specific to the part that you pick. So I'm going to pick a 2 inch, 1/2 inch by 2. And then for the coating, I click on this list, and it gives me a whole bunch of choices. And these choices are ordered by use. So you have the first choice is as received steel, which is basically no coating. Then you have Fastener oil. Then you have a whole bunch of different zinc plating, and then you go down the list. You have all the zinc flake coatings and so on and so forth. So we're going to go with a zinc plating that's non-hexavalent chrome. So a yellow, because typically the grade 8s are coated with a yellow zinc. I'm going to go with a yellow zinc, but because we're eliminating hex chrome, I'm going to go with the non-hexavalent option. So I select that, and then I click on Generate Specifications, and then on this following page, I get all the specific data relative to that part. Now, it's useful to look on the screen, but more often than not, I want to be able to export this into a one-page sheet. So I can click on Print Page as a PDF. You can also export it to a CSV file, and this is a functionality that we recently added to make it possible for people who want to be able to take the data and input it into their MRP system or their, some of their manufacturing databases. But we're going to select the PDF page, and so it downloads it directly off of the browser into your download site, whatever folder you've selected. I'm going to select that, and the page comes up, and this is what it looks like. So you see that you have the description of the part, hex cap screw. This is the drawing that we talked about earlier, right out of the spec. This is the grade marking, so you got the 6 radial lines. And then here you have all the technical data divided by the thread data, the dimensional data of the actual part, then the physical requirements, which is basically the mechanical properties and the chemistries and so on. And then the final section is on the coating, the finished data. And then so in this case, there's a lot of data on this page. So the logo spills over onto the second page. You have the IFI logo attached to it. And if you want to add your own logo, you would have your own logo beside the IFI logo right here. So let's zoom in a little bit on this data sheet and see what type of information we have on it. So as I said, the first section are the thread data. So you see all the relevant information to the threads, the size, the threads per inch, the designation. This is a coarse thread, so it's UNC. You get the gauging, so it's a 2A plated, 3A go, 2A no go. The major diameter, the pitch and functional diameter, the tensile stress area, which is useful for both applications as well as tensile testing. And it's telling you which ASME standard this information comes out of. So this is B11, and then it'll tell you when the last revision date on the ITC was. So here, the last time we updated any information on this part was in 2018, December of 2018. Then the dimensional data. So here, all the characteristics that are on the drawing above that are lettered here, and this is exactly verbatim per the spec. So, for example, body diameter is E. That's what it is in the spec, and that's what we have over here. And you're basically given the tolerances, the mins and maxes or reference values for all of these characteristics. And again, we're not inventing anything. This is directly out of the spec. One thing I'll point out, for example, the point type, because it's a hex cap screw and not a bolt, it's telling you that the point needs to be chamfered, and that comes directly out of the spec. The physical requirements here, this is the grade 8 spec for J429, and so we have the typical materials that are used to make this type of part, the hardness range, which is 33 to 39, the proof load in pounds force, the tensile load in pounds force, and also in tensile strength, which is pounds per square inch. So we're converting the strength requirement into an actual load, which is useful because if I'm doing a tensile test, I don't, 150,000 pounds per square inch is not really helpful, but knowing that the machine has to read a value higher than 21,300 pounds when it breaks the part, that's useful. And same thing with the proof load. It's converting it to an actual load. And then we also have calculated shear loads and other information. Oops. And then we give you a starting point for tightening. So if you want to pretension the bolt to 75% of yield based on the theoretical K value of that coating. And of course, that's subject to verification in any case, but it gives you a starting point. So based on that 0.22 K value, tells you that you need 127 foot-pounds of torque to reach that 75%. We have a more advanced tool if you want to dig into it a little bit more, but on a first sight, this data sheet gives you a good starting point. And then you have, information on the coating, the finish of the coating, and then the specification that that applies to this coating, which is in this case ASTM F1941. So there's an example. I'm going to now go back to the home page of the technology connection. You can play around with this. As I said, every different type of fastener is specified, and we cover about 80% of the metrics and about 98% of the inch product. So you see you got the dowel pins, the blind rivets, the tubular rivets, the screws, all the variety of drywall and lat screws. Some of these are not standard product, but because they're very available and prevalent in the market, we've included them in here. And then you got the lag screws, machine screws, tapping screws, wood screws, and all sorts of other. So you see all varieties of screw products are included. Then you have an important section, which are all the socket products. So in the socket products, you get all the different types of socket, internal, external socket screws. So the most common one is the hex socket cap screw. But you have the set screws as well as the flatheads and so on. So again, all the socket products that exist in the standards. And then here there's a statement for non-standard products, socket shoulder set screws. And so there's a statement, if you're curious about what that statement is, it's basically telling you, there's a specification for non-standard parts here that you could use as well. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to go back to the home page of the technology connection, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the other tools that are surrounding this. So this is, again, the heart of the matter, but then you can look at some other things. So for example, fastener weights. If I click on fastener weights, and this is good for, obviously, for shipping and that sort of managing that sort of information. If I want to know the weights of, let's say, in this case, it's going to be, I don't know, go with heavy hex bolts. And the length of the bolt is 3 inches, and it's going to be made of steel. So I'm going to pick carbon steel. I submit that. And what it does is it tells me for every size from 1/2 inch to 1 3/4, what 100 pieces will weigh. So if it's 1/2 inch by 3, 100 pieces are going to weigh 20.9 pounds. And then if it's 1/2 inch, 1 3/4 by 3, then it'll weigh 240 pounds. So obviously there's some, variance here that you have to keep in mind. But again, it gives you a good idea of what weights you're looking at when you're doing some shipping. I'm going to go back to the home page. And we have other ones, for example, fastener test requirements. So here, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to go back to that grade 8 part, that SAE J429 grade 8 part. I'm going to select that. I submit it. And I get on this one page all the tests that are required to do on that part. These are the standard required tests on the part. So you see that you have the core hardness, you have to check for decarburization. Proof load testing is not mandatory, although most people will do it. You have to do a wedge tensile test. It tells you what the wedge angle is for less than when the nominal diameter is less than 1, and for when it's greater than 1, and so on and so forth. So you get all the requirements here. Continuing on with the other tools that are available. Let's let's see. So here we've got, oh, this is a really useful tool here, the raw material conversion. This is especially useful for distributors that import a lot of product from other countries or from overseas or from Asia. So for example, if I get a material that comes from China and it had the steel itself has a designation that I don't recognize, so I'm selecting either the new system or the old system, doesn't matter. And then so here I get a listing of the most common fastener grade steels that are used, from the carbon steels to the stainless steels and the alloy steels. I'm going to pick one of these. And I submit it, and it gives me the equivalents in all the other systems. So the closest equivalence that we have in our US system is 1026. So that ML25MN corresponds to 1026. It's not necessarily an exact correspondence, but it's a close enough correspondence. We don't have, obviously you have the same types of materials in the other countries, but the exact correspondence is not applicable. But you do see one for Japan. And the reverse search is true as well. So if you start with, let's say, our own designation, AISI designation, and I'm looking for, let's say, a 4140, and I click on that, well, it'll tell me in all the other systems what those designations are. So in Germany, it's a 42 CRM04. In Italy, it's a 41 CRM04. Ironically, you got 2 systems in Japan, and so on and so forth. So again, a useful tool. Moving on. Let's see, locking performance. So here, this is a tool that is useful. Let's select a nut. And we're going to select the nut, let's say 1/4 inch nut, that's an NE8, grade NE8. And so then from there, I have only one choice of a standard to pick from. And when I do that, basically this is telling me for this size nut, grade NE8, nylon insert lock nut, this is the specification, this is the proof stress, the clamp load, prevailing first install maximum torque, and prevailing first removal minimum torque in inch pounds, fifth removal prevailing torque in inch pounds, and so on. So this is again the information that if I'm selling lock nuts, nylon insert lock nuts, it tells me exactly what the requirements are that I have to satisfy. Or if I'm buying or selling it, it also tells me what requirements I have to satisfy. So moving on, again, I'm basically showcasing some of the most significant tools. Fastener finishes is another one. So here, if I select the finish, you remember when we were selecting the fastener originally and we had a coating selection, we got this list. Basically, all the list of coatings that are commonly used on fasteners by, ordered by what's most common, which is the electroplating, and then down to the zinc flake coatings. Okay, so if I did that, then, if I knew exactly what I wanted, then it would be easy to select. But let's say I don't know, and so I want to sort the coatings by process. So we've got as received steel, the ITC's coatings, the ceramic metallic coatings, the conversion coatings, electroless coatings, electroplated coatings, epoxy electrocoat, fluoropolymer coatings, hot dip galvanized coatings, mechanical coating, and then the non-electrolytic zinc flake coatings. All of them are listed here. And then let's say rather than do it this way, you're not sure what you're looking for. You just want a little bit of guidance. And so here you have some criteria to pick from. You say, well, I do want it to be RoHS or REACH compliant. And I know I want it to be gray, silver or gray. And then so you get a whole list of coatings that are both RoHS compliance and gray. But then in terms of salt spray resistance, you say, well, I want the maximum, so 500 and more, and it gives you the choices And so the choices vary. Here you have a zinc flake coating, and then you also have a hot dip galvanized coating. So they're very different coatings, but based on these criteria, it's telling you, what your choices are. So that's for that. I'm going to go back to the main menu. Here, there's a tightening calculator. So we talked about how the data sheet gives you a starting point for tightening specification, but you can dig a little bit deeper here. So if we go back to that grade 8 part and we select the 1/2 inch 13, and we go back with that non-hexavalent chrome yellow plating, and now you can tighten it either to 75% of yield or into yield at 100%. If you submit that query, it'll tell you that you need 169 foot-pounds to tighten to 100% of yield, or to the yield strength of the fastener. And so you can play around with these variables. Again, anything that has to do with torque and friction has to be verified if it's a critical aspect. So if it's a critical fastener, you're not going to take this information for granted. You're going to do some testing to make sure that your K value is in fact what it's supposed to be, and then you develop your tightening torque based on that. But at least you get a starting point over here to know what to expect and what range you should be looking at. So we're about 8-9 minutes before the end, and so I'm going to finish it off here. You have a couple of choices here that are made available to you as subscribers to the Technology Connection. You get no cost access to our library of technical bulletins. So if you click on technical bulletins, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of technical bulletins that are in the library by title of the bulletin. You pick whichever one you want, you select it, and it downloads that document for you. So for example, this is about how to inspect a square socket recess, so what the requirements are. So these technical bulletins are 2-3 page documents that we've generated to answer some of the most common questions that we get, or some of the most relevant topics that people would be interested in. And then the last thing I'm going to point out here is, as subscribers of the Technology Connection, you get access to no added cost technical assistance. So if you click on that technical assistance tab, you put your name and you put your email address with your question. That question comes to me or somebody else in the technical team, and unless something goes terribly wrong, you'll get an answer before 24 hours have passed. So you can ask, the questions about, well, I found this, or, can you help me with that? If it gets where you really need in-depth support, then we will refer you to the right person or to the right resource to give you that type of support. And sometimes I get a lot of comments about, hey, can you add this product, or this is missing, or the revision date on that spec sheet needs to be updated. Sometimes you might find things that escape us, and then you can certainly give us our feedback, and we're very quick to make those corrections. So with that, I'm going to leave the floor open to see if there are any questions. I'll be happy to answer, and if there are questions that come to you later on, as Joe mentioned, you can send an email to Joe or to Jamie, and we will get an answer to you as soon as we can.
Thank you, Salim. I love this tool. I forgot everything that it had in it. I absolutely love it. I think every company out there should have it. It's a great training tool as well. We do have several questions. One of them is, can you combine products and get any kind of discount? In other words, we have one user that subscribes to the ITC and they have the online. They want to get a new book. If they have all three, do they get a discount, or is they just write a check and get the new book?
Well, all the purchases are actually done online. We don't have a discount for the combined subscription to the ITC and the book, but you do have bundle discounts. I'm going to go into our products tab. You do have bundle discounts if you buy a subscription to the online book and a copy of the hardcover, or a copy of the technology handbook, But to combine the technology connection specifically with the online book, we don't have a bundle discount for that. And the reason is very simple. Most of the standards in the online book don't belong to us, except for the IFI standards, which is about 25% of them. The rest belong to either ASTM or ASME. And every time we sell either a hardcover book or an online subscription, we have to pay those organizations a royalty. And so our margins are very thin in terms of the standards book. So that's why we don't combine the two. But very good question.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, are there any system requirements for multiple users? And I'm adding on to it, and can you use this on any device?
Yes, so the most common use right now is obviously on a computer, on a laptop, so anything that you have a screen. It has not been reformatted to fit on your phone or on your tablet, but I access it through my phone and tablet regularly, both the online book and the technology connection. So even if it's not ideally fitted to fit the phone screen yet, it will be. It's one of our projects in the next year and a half. You can still access it from any device that has internet connection.
Are there system requirements required for multiple users?
So for multiple users, now each subscription seat is specific to one person. So that individual's email address is their login credential. And so if you buy one seat, it's only that one person that can access it. Now, I don't like saying this, but you can share that username to have multiple people using it, but only one person can access it at a time. You can't have two people using that login. If you buy the 5 users or the 10 users, then obviously you can have as many separate accesses as you bought seats.
Okay, and they can be on at the same time, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, and then you had something called user customer subscription. What is that?
So that is basically what we call the unlimited subscription. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Yeah, so it's this thing that's $4,000, and now this gives you unlimited access. So you don't have 5 or 10 seat limitations. You have unlimited access. So there are 2 types of companies that buy this service. One type of company is one where they want to give all their personnel access to the technology connection. And the way they do it is through their own portal. So you have an intranet website that your company uses, and they have a portal. They have their own usernames and logins, and they access it internally. Another type of application or another type of company are distributors that want to give their preferred customers access to the technology connection. In this case, what you do is you put a portal on your website, on your public website to which your customers have access, and they click on it, and you give them, again, you control the portal, so you give them their login credentials based on whatever criteria you use, and that gives them access to the technology connection as customers of yours from your website. So to do those things, you buy the unlimited subscription. It's $4,000 per year.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Next question, is surface area available?
Surface area is not available, no.
Okay, next question. What is the data source for material conversions?
If I understand, when you talk about material conversions, do you mean the hardness values?
For example, AISI to China.
So there are publications and books that do the correspondence. So there are 2 or 3 well-sourced books that do the correspondence between the different designation systems of steel. So that's where we get that information. And again, that's more helpful than precise. Steel is steel. It doesn't matter what language we're speaking, but the designation systems may not have exact matches. And so we do the best that we can.
All right. I know that you had a hard end at 12:45. I loved this. I'm going to watch it again and again. Um, Thank you, Salim, so much. And I want to say thank you to everybody that joined us today. Again, remember, if you're a Pac-West member, this is a great, great member benefit. You get a 20% discount to the ITC. And if you're renewing, you get a 10% discount. Please email Jamie Adams at Pac-West for information. She'll give you an access code on how you can get that. Another great benefit to Pac-West is you get discounts to all of the classes that the Fastener Training Institute provides. And we do have some classes coming up. We are presenting in Houston in March, Fastener Training Week. It's our first in-person class that we've had in a year. We're also introducing a new series of live webinars coming up called Fastener Basics Like Never Before. It's going to be a fast-paced, every other week new session, and we're going to cover every topic that you need to know in the fastener industry. Lastly, Pac-West, more events coming up. We have every month, we have a great thing called Lunch Bunch, and it's a virtual discussions for Pac-West members, and we talk about timely things within our industry. Our next one will be March 12th. It's getting back to business as usual, but we have a whole host of really neat topics. It's free to Pac-West members, so please go to the Pac-West website. There's details and registrations. Also, lastly, Jamie Adams from Pac-West will be sending out a quick survey about today's webinar. Please take a minute, send us your feedback. It's really important to us. And I want to thank everybody. Have a safe weekend. I hope you're healthy, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you, Salim.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.